It was a quiet evening in the middle of Texas. Elon Musk, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans, had pulled his Cybertruck into a small diner. He wasn't surrounded by assistants or a security entourage, just himself, as if he were any other traveler passing through. But Elon Musk is never just another guy. Inside the diner, it was the kind of scene you'd expect in a small Texas town. A few families sat at their tables, chatting quietly over plates of pancakes and burgers. A waitress wiped down the counter, humming along to an old country tune on the radio. And then there was Elon, sitting in the corner with a cup of coffee and a plate of waffles, lost in thought, or perhaps solving another of the world's big problems in his head. But something about him stood out. Maybe it was the casual, yet unmistakably expensive clothes. Maybe it was the energy he seemed to carry, as if his mind was moving faster than anyone else's in the room. Or maybe it was the bright red MAGA hat perched on his head. Whatever the reason, it was impossible to ignore him. As Elon enjoyed his coffee, the peace of the evening was shattered. The unmistakable roar of motorcycles grew louder and louder until the sound practically shook the windows of the diner. A group of 6 bikers pulled into the parking lot, their bikes gleaming under the fading sunlight. They weren't just loud, they were intimidating. The bikers walked into the diner, their leather jackets emblazoned with bold symbols, and their boots thudding heavily on the floor. They didn't look around. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough to command attention. The families at the tables grew quiet. The waitress stopped humming, and even the radio seemed to fade into the background. But Elon didn't flinch. He didn't even look up. He was still calmly cutting into his waffle, as if nothing had happened. The leader of the group, a tall, broad man with a scar running down his cheek, spotted Elon almost immediately. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the red hat and the man wearing it. His lips curled into a smile, though it wasn't a friendly one. Well, he said, his voice low and gravelly. Look who's slumming it with us regular folks. The room went completely silent. All eyes were on Elon and the man towering over him. Elon finally looked up, his face calm and unreadable. Just stopping by for waffles, he said casually, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. The biker chuckled, but there was no humor in it. That hat, he said, pointing to Elon's head, says a lot about a man. What's it say about you? Elon leaned back in his seat, his expression unchanging. I think it says I'm not afraid of a little attention. There was a murmur of laughter from the other bikers, but their leader wasn't amused. He pulled out a chair, spun it around, and sat down directly across from Elon, leaning in close. Funny guy, he said, but out here, funny doesn't count for much. What counts is whether you can back it up. Elon took a sip of his coffee, his gaze steady. You mean in business, engineering, or just life in general? Because I'm pretty good at all 3. The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. The tension was thick, and it was clear this wasn't going to end with small talk. But Elon wasn't intimidated. If anything, he seemed almost amused. He set his coffee cup down and looked the biker leader directly in the eyes. I'm curious, he said. What exactly are you hoping to prove here? The biker smirked, leaning back in his chair. I don't think you get it, friend. Around here, we don't just talk big. We back it up. You think you're smart, don't you? Rich, successful, untouchable. Elon shrugged. I don't think. I just am. The biker's smirk faded, replaced by a look of mild irritation. He wasn't used to being challenged, least of all by someone sitting calmly across from him as if this were a business negotiation. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Elon Musk, someone who had faced bigger challenges than a group of bikers. And yet, the night was just getting started. This wasn't going to end with words alone. The biker leader leaned back in his chair, cracking his knuckles, a sinister smirk spreading across his face. His crew chuckled lowly, their laughter like the rumble of distant thunder. The leader leaned forward, his voice dropping to a growl, loud enough for everyone to hear. You know, people like you, he paused, letting the silence weigh heavy, think you're untouchable. Big shot brains, fancy suits, but out here, he tapped the table sharply with a callous finger. Brains don't mean squat. Elon tilted his head slightly, his expression unflinching. I'm beginning to sense you have a point to make. Care to get to it? Or do we keep playing this game? His tone was calm, almost amused, but there was an unmistakable sharpness in his words. The biker leader laughed, a deep, menacing sound that echoed through the diner. Game, huh? You want to play? Fine. He sat up straight, his eyes narrowing. Out here, respect ain't earned by talking. It's earned by proving you've got the guts to back it up. Elon met his gaze, his demeanor completely steady. Fascinating, he said, his voice cool and measured. And what would you suggest as a proper demonstration of these guts? The leader grinned, leaning back as if savoring the moment. Simple. A little contest. Man to man. The air in the diner thickened. Conversations had stopped completely, and the tension was palpable. The waitress behind the counter gripped her coffee pot, her knuckles turning white. A child at a corner table whispered to his mother, "Is that man really gonna fight?" Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his fingers steepled thoughtfully. "A contest, you say?" His voice was smooth, like someone reviewing an intriguing proposal. "And what, pray tell, would the stakes be?" The biker leader's grin widened. "Your dignity, for starters." His crew roared with laughter, but Elon didn't flinch. "I see," Elon replied, his voice level. "But let me propose an alternative. If you're so confident in your superiority, let's make this interesting. A wager." The laughter died down. The leader raised an eyebrow. "What kind of wager?" Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black wallet. From it, he withdrew a card that gleamed under the diner's dim lights. The card was heavy, metallic, and unlike anything the bikers had ever seen. He placed it on the table with a deliberate clink. "If I win," Elon said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade, "you and your friends pay for everyone's meals and leave this place without another word." The leader's grin faltered, replaced by a shadow of doubt. But it lasted only a second before he barked out a laugh. "And if I win?" Elon shrugged lightly. "Then you get to boast to your friends, your crew, and anyone who'll listen that you bested Elon Musk in a contest of your choosing. I imagine that would be quite the story to tell." The leader's eyes narrowed, scanning Elon's face for any sign of fear or bluff. But all he found was calm confidence. It was unnerving. He slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. "You're on." A murmur rippled through the diner as the leader stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His crew followed suit, their boots stomping heavily on the tiled floor as they made their way outside. Elon, however, didn't rush. He finished his coffee, setting the cup down gently. "No sense wasting good caffeine," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Then he stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the door with the ease of someone heading to a routine meeting. The crowd in the diner watched in stunned silence. The waitress leaned toward one of the cooks, whispering, "Do you think he knows what he's getting into?" The cook, a burly man with grease-stained hands, shook his head. "I don't know, but he doesn't look like someone who backs down." Outside, the cool night air was heavy with the smell of gasoline and leather. The bikers' motorcycles gleamed under the flickering neon lights, their engines growling like restless beasts. The leader gestured to one of his men, who handed him a battered motorcycle helmet. He tossed it to Elon, who caught it with ease. "You're riding," the leader announced, his voice loud and commanding. "We'll see if all that brain power of yours can handle real muscle." Elon turned the helmet over in his hands, inspecting it like a scientist examining a specimen. He looked up at the leader, his expression unreadable. "Interesting choice," he said simply. The leader frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know how to ride, don't you?" Elon smirked faintly. "I've designed rockets that can land themselves on a moving platform in the middle of the ocean." Riding a motorcycle shouldn't be too difficult. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the reaction they were expecting. The leader growled, "All right, genius. Here's how it's gonna go. Race to the end of the road and back. First one here wins. No shortcuts, no tricks." Elon mounted the bike, adjusting the helmet. He ran his hands over the controls, his movements precise and deliberate. The engine roared to life under his command, a sound so powerful it made some of the onlookers jump. The leader revved his own engine, sneering. "Try to keep up?" Inside the diner, the patrons pressed against the windows, their faces lit with a mix of fear and excitement. The waitress muttered under her breath, "This is insane." The engine screamed as the bikes lined up. The leader raised his hand, holding it in the air. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Go." The roar of the engines drowned out everything else as the bikes shot forward like bullets from a gun. The race was on. The bikes roared into the night, cutting through the darkness like blazing comets. The small-town road stretched ahead, empty and foreboding, flanked by shadowy trees that swayed in the wind. The leader's bike surged forward, his body leaning low as he gripped the handlebars with the confidence of a seasoned rider. Behind him, Elon's bike held steady, its rider upright, calm, calculating. The spectators in the diner scrambled to the windows, their breath fogging the glass. A murmur spread among them, bets exchanged in hushed tones. Could the billionaire, a man more at home among algorithms and blueprints, really hold his own against a seasoned biker? The leader glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see Elon struggling to keep up. Instead, he found Musk closing the gap, his posture unnervingly relaxed. The leader grit his teeth, twisting the throttle harder. His bike roared louder, the vibrations coursing through him like adrenaline. "This guy's got no idea what he's in for," he muttered under his breath. But Elon wasn't just keeping up. He was studying, observing every nuance of the bike's behavior. The way it handled the curves, the responsiveness of the throttle, the resistance of the tires against the asphalt. It wasn't a race for him. It was a live experiment, and he was already formulating his strategy. The road veered sharply to the right, a blind turn that could easily spell disaster for the unprepared. The leader took it aggressively, his tires skidding dangerously close to the edge. Behind him, Elon adjusted his angle with surgical precision, leaning just enough to glide through the curve smoothly. The leader noticed. His smirk faltered for the first time. "All right, genius," he growled. "Let's see how you handle some real heat." He yanked the handlebars left, swerving violently toward Elon's bike. The move was blatant, an intimidation tactic meant to rattle his opponent. But Elon didn't flinch. Instead, he smoothly adjusted his position, allowing the leader's bike to graze past without breaking his pace. Inside the diner, the crowd gasped. "Did you see that?" someone exclaimed. He didn't even blink. The leader's frustration was mounting. His crew, watching from their parked bikes at the starting line, began exchanging nervous glances. This wasn't going according to plan. The straightaway loomed ahead, a half-mile stretch of perfect visibility. It was the leader's chance to pull away and leave Musk in his dust. He leaned forward, coaxing every ounce of power from his machine. The speedometer climbed, the needle quivering as it edged closer to its limit. But when he glanced back again, his stomach sank. Elon was right there, matching his speed effortlessly, his bike a relentless shadow. How is he doing this? The leader hissed through gritted teeth. The answer lay in Elon's mind, a place where calculations happened faster than the blink of an eye. He wasn't just riding, he was optimizing. Every movement was deliberate, every decision informed by a mental model of the bike's performance. Where the leader relied on instinct and muscle memory, Elon relied on data, logic, and unshakable focus. The end of the road approached, marked by a rusted old sign barely visible in the moonlight. It was the halfway point, where they'd have to turn and race back. The leader reached it first, skidding into a wide, reckless U-turn that kicked up a cloud of gravel and dust. Elon arrived a heartbeat later, his turn executed with mechanical precision. The gap between them had narrowed. As they accelerated back toward the diner, the leader's frustration boiled over. He began weaving erratically, trying to throw Elon off his rhythm. But no matter what he did, Musk stayed on his tail, a constant, unshakable presence. The crowd outside the diner grew larger, spilling onto the sidewalk as people clamored for a better view. The tension was electric. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Come on, Musk!" The leader's crew exchanged uneasy looks. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Their boss had promised an easy victory, a humiliation for the tech mogul. Instead, it was turning into a neck-and-neck battle. The leader decided it was time for a desperate move. As they approached a narrow bridge, he swerved sharply, trying to force Elon into the guardrail. The gap between the bikes closed dangerously, the sound of grinding metal slicing through the night. But Elon anticipated the move. At the last possible moment, he braked sharply, letting the leader's bike surge ahead. Then, with a deft flick of the handlebars, he slipped into the inside lane, reclaiming his position. The leader cursed loudly, slamming his fist against the handlebars. He pushed his bike harder, but it was too late. The diner was now in sight, its neon sign glowing like a finish line beacon. Elon seized the moment. With a calculated burst of speed, he pulled alongside the leader, their bikes neck and neck as they roared toward the crowd. The leader's crew shouted, urging him on, but their voices were drowned out by the deafening roar of engines and the collective gasp of the onlookers. In the final stretch, Elon leaned forward, his eyes locked on the goal. The calculations clicked into place, his timing impeccable. With a final surge, he edged past the leader, crossing the makeshift finish line a fraction of a second ahead. The crowd erupted in cheers and stunned exclamations. People spilled onto the road, surrounding Elon as he dismounted his bike, his expression as calm as ever. The leader skidded to a stop beside him, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. He ripped off his helmet, pointing a shaking finger at Elon. You cheated?" Elon raised an eyebrow, removing his own helmet with deliberate calm. "Cheated? No, I simply played by the rules you set. You wanted a race, and I gave you one." The leader opened his mouth to retort, but found no words. Around him, his crew shuffled uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. Elon stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Respect isn't about brute force or intimidation. It's earned through integrity and skill." Maybe that's a lesson worth remembering. The leader clenched his fists, but said nothing. Slowly, he turned to his crew, signaling them to mount their bikes. One by one, they roared to life and disappeared into the night. The diner crowd broke into applause, surrounding Elon with praise and questions. He waved them off politely, his eyes scanning the horizon. "It's not about winning," he said to no one in particular, his voice thoughtful. "It's about showing what's possible when you refuse to back down." As the crowd's cheers softened, an air of anticipation filled the night. The silence was broken by a teenager, clutching his phone tightly. His voice wavered, brimming with awe. "Mr. Musk, how did you do that? You've never raced before, right?" Elon's smile was calm but sharp. "That's true. I'm not a racer. But I do know the power of mastering your tools." The bike was just that, a tool. Understand your tools, and you can change the game. The crowd murmured in agreement, the words sinking in like a spark to dry wood. Elon shifted his gaze to a live-streaming phone. "Listen up," he said, his voice now direct and electrifying. "You don't have to be the fastest or the strongest. Be the smartest. Be prepared. Refuse to quit when the odds are against you." The crowd roared in approval, but one figure remained silent. The defeated leader stood on the sidelines, gripping his helmet. His eyes burned with a mix of frustration and reluctant respect. "Elon," he barked, stepping forward. The crowd parted, their chatter silenced. You won tonight, but it wasn't skill, it was luck? Elon raised an eyebrow, his tone measured. Luck? Or preparation, meeting opportunity? The leader hesitated, then extended a calloused hand. I don't like you, Musk. But I respect you. Elon gripped the hand firmly. Respect earned is respect deserved. The crowd erupted in cheers, their energy contagious. Elon turned to the cameras. What are you doing to win your race? Sitting back? Or preparing to take control? His voice was sharp, a challenge to all watching. Then, with a grin, he added, subscribe, you won't want to miss what's next. As he revved the engine, someone called out, what is next, Elon? He smirked. We aim for the stars. The bike roared as he disappeared into the night, leaving the crowd buzzing with inspiration. This wasn't just about a race. It was about daring to see challenges as stepping stones to greatness. The roar of Elon's motorcycle faded into the night, leaving the crowd buzzing with energy and conversation. Slowly, they began to disperse, but for Elon, the real reflection was just beginning. Back in his workshop, surrounded by prototypes and coffee-stained notebooks, Elon's mind raced. The adrenaline of the race had settled, replaced by clarity. Tonight wasn't just about outsmarting a biker gang. It was about pushing boundaries and proving that limits are self-imposed. Among the flood of livestream comments, one caught his eye. What if I don't have your brains or resources? How can someone like me make it? The question struck a chord. For Elon, success wasn't about being born with advantages. It was about relentless problem-solving and daring to think differently. Inspired, he resolved to turn tonight's lesson into something tangible. The next morning, he gathered his team with electrifying urgency. We're creating something new, he declared. A tool that teaches anyone anywhere how to solve problems and innovate. No fluff, real, actionable skills. Skepticism lingered, but Elon's conviction was unshakable. Over the next weeks, the project, Pathfinder, came to life, a free, accessible platform aimed at empowering anyone with curiosity and persistence. When launch day arrived, Elon returned to the same street where the race had taken place. Standing before a camera, he addressed millions. This isn't about me. It's about everyone who's ever been told they can't. Genius isn't born, it's built. And Pathfinder will show you how to build it. The platform became a global sensation overnight. Stories of students, artists, and mechanics using it to transform their lives poured in. Elon watched the world ignite with possibility, knowing this was just the beginning. What's next? He mused, leaning back in his chair. For Elon Musk, the answer was always the same. Whatever it takes. As Pathfinder's success soared, Elon Musk found himself in an unfamiliar calm. Not the kind that came from victory, but the restless peace that asked, what's next? He sat alone in a dimly lit cafe, scrolling through stories of Pathfinder changing lives. Yet, amidst the tidal wave of impact, he sensed a new challenge. People weren't just inspired. They were hungry for tools to face an uncertain future. Elon knew it wasn't about creating more complexity. It was about helping people believe in their ability to tackle it. One text from an engineer stood out. Users say Pathfinder is too basic. Should we make it harder? Elon's response was instant. Don't make it harder. Make them believe they can do harder things. This clarity drove him. Complexity wasn't the barrier, self-doubt was. Elon's mission wasn't just building rockets or platforms. It was dismantling the mental barriers people imposed on themselves. A week later, he was live streaming again, this time with a deeply personal message. Sitting in his cluttered workshop, he spoke with rare vulnerability. The first step to creating something extraordinary is believing you can. Not tomorrow, not after a big break, right now. Failing isn't a detour, it's the path. The camera panned out, revealing the humble chaos of his workspace, a reminder that greatness starts from messy beginnings. Elon leaned forward, his tone intense. No one's handing you your dreams. You fight for them every day. But if you're willing to challenge what you think is possible, that's when the magic happens. As he stood to leave, his final words resonated deeply. Success isn't about what you achieve, it's about who you become. The world is waiting for you to realize that. The stream ended, but the message lingered. Musk wasn't just moving humanity forward with technology. He was changing the way people thought. And that, he believed, was the true revolution.